Welcome to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by Lucas Oil and TireRack.com. Here's your MotorWeek podcast host, John Davis.
Thank you, Alec Webb, and welcome everyone to MotorWeek podcast number 267. I indeed am John Davis, and with me today are Kyle Scanlon and Jessica Ray from our staff. And we're going to jump right into things. The 2022 Hyundai Elantra N. Kyle, you've had a chance to drive it. Tell us all about it.
So yeah, just the other week I was invited out to Sonoma, California, where we were at the infamous Sonoma Raceway and got to test both the Elantra N and the Kona N, both of which have a four-cylinder turbocharged powertrain, and 276 horsepower. And I got to say, both of these cars were absolutely amazing to drive. The Elantra, I was lucky enough to drive on the actual raceway. And my favorite thing in the world is obviously having a third pedal. And, for being a younger person on the staff, I love manual transmissions and I wish every car had them.
Good for you. Good for you.
But unfortunately, that's not the case, both of which the Kona and the Elantra are available with a wet dual clutch transmission for those that don't want a third pedal. But I have to say, I was absolutely blown away by both vehicles. One of my favorite aspects of them has to be how they tune the exhaust system. The cracks and the pops that come from that car, yeah. It almost doesn't make sense because you don't expect those noises to come from an Elantra, especially a Kona. And the looks I got on the road while I was passing some people and downshifting and making a whole lot of noise was a blast, I gotta say.
Very, very European. The 2-liter Turbo 4, that's the one that they've already been using in the Veloster, and it doesn't have a boost function.
It does have a boost function. They have there's an N button that you can hit on the steering wheel that pushes the car to its maximum. So you get about, I think they said 40 seconds that you get this complete boost with everything the car has to offer. But then after it's done, you're not allowed to hit the button again for a minute or two. I can't remember the exact details, but the car basically has to cool down in between your
it takes the horsepower up to what, 286?
Yeah, it goes from 276 to 286. And it was really fun to hit that button on the straight line coming around the course, because the first couple laps, I noticed that the car in front of me kept pulling away, and I was foot to the floor, going all the way to the rev limiter, and I couldn't catch this guy for some reason. And then the next lap, I realized I didn't hit the button, and when I hit the button, I was right with him.
The Kona, it's kind of unusual. I mean, everybody and their brother's got a performance SUV, but we haven't really seen that much of the real performance SUVs coming from Asian manufacturers. So the Kona N really stands out, and it's a small vehicle, but it's not super duper small, and it's extremely usable. So what did you think about that combination of this really practical and affordable SUV getting this kind of treatment? It's a little unusual.
It's definitely unusual, but they made it work. I have to say, the Kona is extremely reliable. It's extremely comfortable. It's a great, small family hauler, or, for someone that just needs a little extra space in the vehicle. But adding that performance factor to it, I think it's really going to open it up to like a new market, if you will. It'll get people to start looking at that car that had probably never really looked at it before and thought that it would be something that they would want, because it was just, practical, affordable, and not nearly as performance driven.
It's almost like, the hot hatchback revisited from the 80s, but in a totally different direction.
Yeah.
Speaking of SUVs, let's go from the small to the fairly large. Jessica, Jeep Grand Cherokee. First, we had the Cherokee L. Now we've got the mainstay Cherokee. Why do you think Jeep did the 3-row first and the 2-row second?
I think they really wanted to emphasize this new 3-row, because chats with a lot of the PR folks at Jeep, they almost they think that they're going to sort of sell half and half. Like half are going to be 3-row, half are going to be 2-row. And I'm assuming they also hope that'll just boost sales overall, probably more than the volume that they already produce, which, I mean, the Grand Cherokee is already one of their best sellers. It sort of battles with the Wrangler every year. But I think it really got a lot of good press. I think doing it this way, putting the 3-row out there first, and people are on the road and they're looking at this new car and they're like, what is that? And then you see, oh wait,
that is very true. The first time I
Grand
saw it
Cherokee.
on the road, it's like, wait a minute. I didn't even know that was in the dealership yet.
Exactly. And it's so funny because for Thanksgiving, I drove up to New York to go visit family, and I stopped to get gas. I was driving a Prius, by the way. I stopped to get gas.
Good for you. Smart, smart, smart on the pocketbook.
Yeah, no, I'm much better than my Jeep on gas. But anyway, so I stopped to get gas, and in front of me, filling up in front of me, was a guy in a Grand Cherokee L. And somebody else parked going inside also had a Grand Cherokee L, and they both started talking and they were complimenting each other's Grand Cherokee L. But then also was just like, it really, that new design language, the Grand Cherokee L really launched that, because we see that in the Grand Cherokee, we see it in the Wagoneer. We're going to see some more of it with the new Compass. We're likely going to see it when the Cherokee gets a redesign. So it's really launching this whole new generation of Jeep, really, because now that Stellantis is in, they've really been trying to focus on building back the brand, making people believe that, or trying to get in better graces with a lot of customers.
I think the Cherokee
reliability.
cost them a lot of followers. It was such a departure.
Yeah. And so the back to the 2-row model, if you take a look at it on the exterior wise, it's a shorter wheelbase version of the Grand Cherokee L. The proportions are really, really nice. And I mean, when I saw the Grand Cherokee L, it felt big. It looked big. This definitely will bring you back and like, oh yes, this is the Grand Cherokee that I know. This is the sizes. These are the proportions.
This is the heart of the mid-sized market.
Mhm.
And when I saw it, I agreed with you. I think that the proportions actually are just about perfect. And they took a real chance of taking that icon and destroying it but they haven't.
They've kept it safe too. I think the design language is very safe. If you see it on the road, you're going to know it's a Grand Cherokee because it's very reminiscent of before, of the last generation, but just sort of smoothed out and more modern. So exterior wise, I think it looks fantastic. You also have now the option of I think it's the 2 upper trim levels. You can get the black gloss roof, which looks very, very nice. I had a very interesting spec when I drove it. I had an all white version, like the roof was white. I think I had I had an all white version, and if you took a look at it, it looked very much like the previous generation, in a good way, that you're like, oh yeah, this is a Grand Cherokee. And I actually had all the press photos have the black roof on a lot of the models. So it was really interesting to see. But
let me ask you about the interior. I mean, they've stuck with the traditional looking grille, the theme of the grille for the Jeep and all that. So outside, I think it's unmistakable a Jeep. But what the interior, I assume, is a direct copy over from the L. But now that you've seen the Grand Wagoneer with all of its screens, and the Wagoneer with a few lot less, and then the L, do you think they've been able to go digital inside these larger Jeep products and keep that Jeep flavor?
Yes, I think so. I mean, it's very clear that the design language is going to be throughout the entire lineup, and this is where they want to move. And they want to compete not just where the Grand Cherokee was before, but they want to compete now with the higher end luxury SUVs. in which if you sit in a Summit Reserve that costs like $66,000, you're going to feel like that. The quality of materials is better. The technology is better. Now, there's a couple differences with the 2021 Grand Cherokee L, and this is now the 2022 Grand Cherokee. They have not announced pricing yet for the 2022 Grand Cherokee L. So this is only right now factual for the 2-row Grand Cherokee, but now you have the option for the passenger screen in the front. So you can also get that. There is the rear seat entertainment. From what it seems like too, pricing is going to go up on the Grand Cherokee L for 2022 because the pricing that was announced for the 2-row was definitely very at the same level as the Grand Cherokee L. So I want to warn people of that.
If you can find a 21, buy it. So.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, no, moving back to the interior, it's one of my favorite interiors because it is such an improvement over the previous generation. It uses a lot of fantastic technology on the inside, but still there's a lot of buttons. There's still plenty of buttons, like climate control. Everyone hates that they, the models in which they put the climate control in the touchscreen. You have buttons for that. Just very well thought out, because they know exactly who they're going to sell these to. They really were focusing on people who use these models to drive all the time. They're carrying their children around. They're going on long road trips, and they, manage to eke out as much space inside as they possibly can. Whether that's comfort for passengers, which is obviously key when it comes to a Grand Cherokee, but also plenty of room in the rear for all of your luggage and things you need for storage. And of course, it is absurdly capable. If you buy a Summit Reserve, you're going to get the top of the line 4x4 package, essentially. And you're going to have a Jeep that is so much more capable than anything you will ever put it through. But yeah.
Great report, both of you. We're going to move on now to something I have a chance to recently drive. And in a way, it was actually one of the stars of the LA Auto Show, but stay tuned, everybody. We're going to recap the LA Auto Show in just a few minutes down the line. But I had a chance to spend about an hour in the Lucid Air. Now, if you up on electric vehicles at all, you know that Lucid is a startup company. The Air is their first offering. It's a very luxurious, large EV sedan. It's already won Motor Trend's Car of the Year, and it's very controversial because at the moment, the only model that is out is the Air Dream Edition, and it's $169,000. But it is a competitor for all of the awards this year, including the North American Car of the Year. And that's how I got to drive it. And we've had a couple of comments, according to Jessica online, from my first drive, because I'm in a car doing my comments, but I'm not driving. And it's pretty clear that it's not the Lucid Air. And it's totally my fault. I had a camera malfunction, and so we did the best we could. So forgive us for that, but we do make mistakes. And we only had a very brief time with the car. Having said that, here is this $169,000 automobile, the first one to break the EPA 500-mile range barrier. Yes, folks, somebody did it, and it wasn't a Tesla. They have a 118 kilowatt-hour battery pack, and in the range tuning, there's two tunings. There's range and performance. In the range tuning, it has a maximum distance of 520 miles. Now, in the performance edition, that range drops to 471 miles, but it breaks the 1,000 horsepower barrier, 1,111 horsepower. Mind you, you still get 933 horsepower with the range version, but they've done, an excellent job of packaging a big battery and an extremely good looking automobile. and, topping Tesla in a couple of ways. They will have a lower range single motor. The launch edition is dual motor, all-wheel drive. They'll have a longer, a single motor version at more competitive to Tesla at about $77,000, more competitive to the S out in January. But it is this full-on, highly luxurious model that I had a chance to drive. And I have to say, I was very impressed. And that's with a couple of caveats. There have been some comments from folks that saw their exhibit at the LA Auto Show that they didn't think the quality looked like it was all there, particularly the exterior quality. The particular model I drove, which obviously was a prototype, I saw no obvious shortfalls on quality, either exterior or interior. And it is the interior of this car that just leaps out at you and says, you are driving a very, very premium vehicle. Think Scandinavian more than, say, German, lighter tones in this particular model I drove. Yes, plenty of touchscreens, but plenty of redundant manual controls as well, something you were just talking about on the Jeeps. And that's what I'm looking for rather than just a big blank screen. Is it fast? Yes. 2.4 seconds, 0 to 60. You expect it to be fast. What impressed me, though, was that the throttle was not temperamental. It was not touchy. You could drive this vehicle in heavy traffic, and we did, mostly around Northern Virginia. And anybody who lives there knows what the traffic's like. And it was very docile. Did it handle well? Yes, it did. All that weight, lower center of gravity. I'm not sure we've driven an EV yet that doesn't handle well because of the lower center of gravity. But I was impressed that the car had real feedback through the steering wheel. I felt like I was driving something basically close to an S-Class or an Audi A8 as far as feel through the feedback. It's a very interesting car. It's going to be very interesting to see if they will be able to get this same kind of combination of range, quality, and feel in their upcoming SUV. But we've had a chance to drive the Lucid Air. I think right now it deserves a lot of praise. I'm not really sure that it deserves all of the accolades it's probably going to get because it is extremely expensive. But just like Tesla did some benchmarking and breakthroughs when they came out with the original S, I think Lucid has done that with the Air, and their first impressions are very, very strong. Either of you have any questions about it?
I do. I have a question.
Yeah.
What was like were there a couple drive modes you had? Like, what was the regen braking and how did that feel?
The regen braking was you were able to basically do one on or off. It had some normal regen braking, but under normal drive mode, it was extremely mild. Only when you basically went after, and I've forgotten exactly what they called it, the more regen drive mode did you feel it kick in and really kind of bring you down. Could you do one pedal driving? Yes, you could do one pedal driving, although that was not a feature that they were highlighting on the car. And I'm not a real big fan of one pedal driving anyway, but I found that when we were on some of the back roads, anticipating where the stop signs were, you could pretty much get it down to 0 without tapping the brakes.
That doesn't surprise me.
It was under normal conditions, I left it in there with the normal drive mode, and I thought the regen braking was pretty mild.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't surprise me because I think the people that they want to sell to probably don't care so much about they care more about the overall driving experience.
Which was very luxurious.
Right. The only thing that you lose when you sort of are a little bit light when it comes to regen braking is just the saving of energy when you're driving.
Yeah, but you know what? I have to say that having now been in so many of the electric vehicles, I'm just not impressed with how much on these high mileage, high range vehicles. I'm not impressed with how much regen braking is actually helping you. Now, mind you, if you're down to your last few miles and you're trying to make it home, yeah, I'm sure it pays off. But otherwise, it seems to be, if you've got it up to the max setting in whatever you're in, a very uncomfortable distraction. If the whole idea of these electric vehicles is to get you in them and make you feel like you're not making a lot of compromises versus an internal combustion engine, yet doing something that's better for the planet, regen braking sort of takes away from that. It sort of reminds you that maybe this is not a perfect technology yet. So I know that when I get into an EV with my spouse, Cheryl, and I've got the regen up, or when she has a chance to sample it, because I'm always after her opinion, she finds the regen braking annoying and obtrusive and just not the kind of driving experience that she would opt for on an all-out situation. So
I can see, yeah, no, I absolutely get that, especially as a passenger. And I would say that
that's another point.
As a passenger who, occasionally, like I get motion sickness, and so I can see how regen could be attributed to a more uncomfortable experience. But certainly when I'm alone, actually, when I drove the C40 Recharge, that was strictly really one pedal drive, and I was almost surprised about how much I really liked how hard the regen braking was. But like I said, it doesn't surprise me that Lucid is a little lighter on that, just because other time spent in, say, like the Taycan, I felt
Right.
the Taycan was also very much like that.
Yes.
But that's just, I think, the nature of those are also two very, very large vehicles, large, luxurious vehicles. But
And a lot of weight. So when you get that jerk from regen braking, you're getting a lot of physics in there. I mean, it tosses you around. Kyle, I'm curious, since you're being in charge of road testing, you drive everything we get in, including all of the electrics, actually more than most of us do. When you're basically driving those vehicles on your own, do you keep the regen at a lower level, or do you crank it up?
I kind of play around with it for the most part. So the most, recent one we had the new ID4, the Volkswagen N, and I was really trying to figure out how much the regen braking helped. And driving back and forth from the track, which, is pretty far away from our office, and a lot of that, on Route 70 and whatnot, a lot of hills up and down. And I would, I'd try to test it out where a lot of the downhill slopes, I would put the regen braking on maximum and just, barely have my foot on the gas pedal going down. And there were times during, a few miles, of going downhill and coasting and having the regen on, I could gain 5 or 7 miles back on the charge. Right. Yeah, it was doing pretty well. I actually had to make a game time decision because I planned on bringing the ID4 home after our track testing. And at that point where I decide whether I go back to the office or go home, I had 44 miles until I got back to my house, and I had 46 miles left on the charge. So at that moment, I was kind of like, well, the office is only 20 miles away. So I'm going to go back to the office and plug it in, a little bit of range anxiety there. But I do agree that, I've never been in an EV actually when someone has the regen on maximum, but as a driver, sometimes it can be somewhat jolting and severe when you let off the gas and all of a sudden you're leaning forward and you don't really expect to. And
but you just made the point that when you get to the point where you're a little bit nervous about range and there's no fast charger around, and you were up, and most folks don't realize our test track we use now in Boonesboro is up in the foothills of Maryland.
Yeah,
you got some pretty severe inclines there, and you took advantage of it, and that's a positive thing. So
yeah,
it got you home.
It did. It got me back to the office. Didn't get me home.
Oh, I thought you were going to go for it at that point.
Come on.
No, I didn't go for it at that time. I didn't want to get stuck on the side of the highway.
No, please.
Come on, Kyle. We got you that the ID4 has 3 years of free Electrify America charging. You could have stopped anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could have stopped at a Walmart. Come on.
I will confess that I did the same thing, although the land was much flatter. The longest trip I took in the Ford Mustang Mach-E, I basically got home with, it was no longer registering any charge at all. And I was using but I just think when if paying 6 figures for something like a Lucid Air Launch Edition, that's not going to impress them, I don't think. But
Well, it's interesting you say that, John, because I'm not really talking about it in this podcast. Probably we'll talk about it in the next one. But I recently drove the new Porsche Taycan GTS sedan, and the folks at Porsche were like, we want people to do that. We want people to test its limits, go to empty, because you can. A lot of the sort of information that comes out about EVs, about charging wise, will be, you can get a 10% to 80% charge in such and such amount of minutes. But the people at Porsche were like, take it down to, you have 2
0.
miles,
Yeah.
miles left. And, because the car can go.
I'm sure that the automakers are dialing in a fudge factor. They've always done that with gasoline and diesel powered vehicles. You read empty and you've got a gallon or 2 gallons left. You just don't really know how much. And it's probably the same with these batteries. There's a little bit of fudge factor in there. Maybe it's 5 miles, maybe it's 10, who knows? I've never heard anybody speak to it, but
it changes too.
I think there is kind of a challenge to see how much you can get out of one of these.
Oh, no, definitely.
I'll drive the next one down to 0, see what happens. I'll have a support vehicle behind me just in case.
Well, they better have some way to charge you up, or they'll just, please don't leave it by the side of the road.
Oh.
All right, let's move on. That was a great discussion, everybody. We do have a YouTube question from Wildlife Prepper. Wildlife Prepper. Okay, this is a good one.
Sounds like my kind of person.
Why do cars always have to get bigger? The new Civic is bigger than Accords of the past. Bigger isn't always better. I would like to see a car shrink a bit for once. Well, I got my own impression of why it's going on, but I'll save that for the end. Who wants to start?
It's all about safety. Cars are safer than they have ever been. Just think about cars have to be even thicker and wider because I want to say it was 2003 or 2002 was when they introduced side impact airbags. They didn't. I don't actually think my Jeep has side impact airbags, but I could be wrong. But
they've been around for almost 20 years.
Yeah, they've been around for 20 years. So just the nature of new technology has and more safety has made cars bigger. And it's funny that they mention, we wish cars would get smaller because the new Jeep Grand Cherokee, the 2-row model, is actually 250 pounds lighter than the previous generation. Part of that has nothing to do, it's not like it's less safe, but they just utilized lighter metals to create the vehicle. But yeah, no, big
lighter actually means smaller in that respect.
If you want to say it's smaller weight wise, but it's not smaller lengthwise.
They just use more high strength steel and some aluminum and magnesium.
Yeah.
Like that, because weight's a big issue in fuel economy. So they want to get that as they want, if they're going to go up in size, that's great, but they don't want to lose fuel economy, and weight's the way to get that out, or one of the ways.
Yeah. But one of the big things too is that the average size of a vehicle and this has to do with the fact that we love trucks and we love SUVs here in America. The average size of a vehicle has increased over the last few decades.
Boy, has it.
So much so that the IIHS has actually very recently increased the size and weight of their side impact barrier, which they use in testing. And they retested a bunch of crossovers, specifically, I guess, compact crossovers.
I would think so. Yeah.
That is the class. And the only compact crossover that they retested to receive a good score on that test was the Mazda CX-5.
Wow.
So
Well, it could be, I guess. Yeah. The thing that struck me about this question is, if you go back long before either one of you two were born to the Detroit mantra of the 1950s and 60s, it was longer, lower, wider. And they were answering the call from Americans for more room inside. It really didn't have much to do with safety. And I noticed this sort of kickoff in the last, really accelerating the last two product cycles, the last 15 years, by everybody seeking a little bit more room here and a little bit more room. And then here comes Volkswagen with its Jetta and Passat, and they made those vehicles longer and wider to get more rear seat room and be able to claim at the time that they had the most in their segments. And once somebody does that, then everybody else has got to do that to remain competitive. So there is, besides safety, and I think the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety has had a big factor in this, but I think there's also been a marketing factor that when one of your competitors makes their vehicle to get an edge somewhere in the cabin, particularly in the back seat, you've got to pretty much do it too. So we're in a cycle, and it's also one of the reasons that we're seeing compact sedans continue to sell reasonably well, like the Civic, but the midsize sedans wane, because now the compacts are almost as big as what we used to think about midsize, or actually it is in some cases. So I'm not sure, wildlife prepper, you're going to get your wish anytime soon, because it's pretty clear that bigger vehicles are selling well in this country, unless we continue to see gas get a lot more expensive than even it is today. And that's possible. Last time that happened, nobody could buy small vehicles fast enough. So here we go. Okay, let's, we were teasing a little bit before talking about the LA Auto Show and the Lucid Air making a big public debut there. But there were some other things. Now, a lot of people didn't even think the LA Auto Show for 2021 was going to happen. A lot of brands did not partake in the LA Auto Show, but those that did got a lot of publicity. So let's go around, you two, and Kyle, let's start with you. Looking at what was new at the LA Auto Show, did you have a favorite?
I mean, the one that really caught my eye was the Taycan GTS Sport Turismo.
I wonder why.
Because I mean, it looks great. It does, with 590 horsepower coming out of it, with launch control, a 3.5 second 0 to 60, a sub 12 second quarter mile with a top speed of 155 miles an hour. It's definitely going to outperform, I feel like, what it looks like. It's a little bit clunkier, obviously a little bit bigger, but it just, going through all the vehicles that were released, that was just the one. Every time I was scrolling through all the pictures between the Porsche Cayman that came out and the other Taycan, what was the name of that one, Jess?
Are you talking about the Cross Turismo?
Or the Cross Turismo, the one that's the more off-road. So they will see how many people use it that way. But it was something about the GTS Sport that just caught my eye. I love the styling of it. It's got a big long front end, the sloping rear on it. I'm excited to see what the rear seat space is like. How comfortable is to sit in the back of that? Because I'm guessing that's one of the reasons that they went in the direction they did, was A, to have more cargo room, and B, to have a more, comfortable, luxurious rear seat section for passengers. But, with a price tag over $130,000, it's a pretty steep price tag. So we'll see how many they sell, but it's definitely the one that caught my eye more than anything else.
And
I
it
think it
looks
says a lot about what Porsche's doing. They're not leaving any niche unattended. Go
Yeah.
ahead. Go
Well,
ahead,
see,
Jeff.
it looks great in that carmine red. That
Yeah.
red is hot. That is a
Yeah.
great color.
The green is great too.
The green is very cool. The green is cool. I think that's sort of the staple color for the Cross Turismo.
Okay.
Mhm.
Anybody that doesn't know what we're talking about as far as visually, go and do your Google for the 2021 LA Auto Show. Best of show. I think it probably is considered one of the, Porsche really took advantage of the fact that not a lot of manufacturers were showing new stuff there.
Can
Go
we
ahead.
call it a wagon?
I was kind of wondering. I almost called it the wagon, but I didn't quite
'Cause
want to
it's-
call it the wagon.
Well,
kinda
it's,
a
it's-
wagon.
we have called those that body shape that before. I mean, they will never do that, but we have. So.
I mean, it's kind of a wagon. It's a Taycan wagon.
Yeah.
So what did Jessica, what did you see that interests you beside that?
Of course, big news being Toyota and Subaru's EV news. We got the BZ4X on the Toyota side and the Solterra on the Subaru side. Very much looking like a RAV4. That's just very
Yeah.
smooth. Very smoothed out RAV4. So these, not surprising. Nothing about this was surprising, but this is a big deal because this is finally, the Toyota sells how many RAV4s every year? 1 million of them.
Yeah.
So this is a very big deal of getting, hopefully, a relatively affordable compact crossover EV out, or another one into the segment. Toyota obviously being such a leader in that segment here in the US. So it was sort of a matter of time. And I know almost Toyota does it begrudgingly a little bit.
Oh yeah, they've actually gotten a lot of criticism because they've not been more forthright, or I should say aggressive in pure EVs, but this is a company that basically made practical the hybrid, and you've already got the RAV4 Prime plug-in, which is a superior vehicle.
And they can't
It
make
is
enough
a
of
rather
them.
natural evolution that they would go after that market.
Yeah, I
within
mean, we're looking at under 250-mile range. But the interior looks really nice. I mean, very much very simple, but still a lot of good touch controls to it. Obviously, we didn't really get to see too much of it, and we will eventually, probably, hopefully, early in the new year. But the Solterra also looks very similar. John and I were talking about this. The
Right.
relationship is very similar to that of the BRC and the GR86, which of course I think is a good thing. Specifically when we talk about a big difference being on the Subaru side, it will have standard all-wheel drive. Of course, the
Right.
Subaru, it's going to have that, and likely just feel a bit more rugged and durable than the Toyota.
The other two, and they were concepts that struck me, the Hyundai 7 concept and Kia EV9, both 3-row crossover EVs. They're really going to have to notch. I thought they were both kind of interesting. They're both very blocky, and you could say they take some styling cues from the Hummer. I don't know. I'm not going to go quite that far, but
Sort of.
while we look at things like the RAV4 and most of the other EVs that are out now that are reasonably affordable, you could use them as a second vehicle. They've got 250 to 300-mile range. You're not likely to take it on a long interstate trip. When you start looking at your larger 3-row SUVs, which these two concepts do, I almost wonder if they're not going to have to pull a rabbit out of the hat as far as range and affordability combined when those finally make it out. But what did you two think of those two big vehicles?
I love the EV9. I hate to say that it kind of looks like a giant Kia Soul, but it kind of does, and I kind of really like it. Like, I didn't think I would, but I actually kind of really liked it. It's very angular, and maybe it was the color that they used, because they use this very gorgeous, like, blue turquoise color
The
for the
metallic
EV9.
blue.
Yeah, it was gorgeous. And obviously it's a concept, but they do say that it's going to be very influential in sort of the EVs that we see from them. And the fact that they can't even make enough 3-row SUVs as it is, both Hyundai and Kia, because
Right.
the Palisade and the Telluride right now are some of the hottest on the market.
You see them
Um,
everywhere.
You see them everywhere. You see them everywhere, but you can't buy one because
Right.
everybody else is buying one. And you certainly can't buy one for MSRP.
Yeah, no way.
But so I think I personally would love to see more fuel efficient 3-row SUVs before I see an all electric ones. I was having a conversation very similar to this kind of recently, because someone on Twitter spotted a Tahoe hybrid, and I was thinking in my mind, we're going to see a Tahoe EV before we see another Tahoe hybrid.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, obviously, I think it's a good thing moving toward the EV, but kind of be nice if they were maybe a plug-in
hybrids,
hybrid,
folks.
a plug-in hybrid
hybrids.
with, but not just a plug-in hybrid, but one that uses like the powertrain is just more well thought out, so that when you are not using the EV side of the plug-in hybrid, you still get you are still being fuel efficient. That is my biggest
Right.
issue, and maybe that turns into the rant of the day, but my biggest thing with plug-in hybrids is when you're not using the electric range, you're sometimes getting the same or worse. But anyway, so that
Well, no,
I do like
I
the
think
EV9.
it's reasonable. I think if you look at the way that the Europeans are approaching it, they're getting rid of V8s. They're largely getting rid of V6s. They're going to large 4 cylinders.
Mhm.
And then they're putting a 48-volt electrical system on. So they've got
Yep.
EV boost available at almost all times. And I think that's what they're after, because they're recognizing that most of the vehicles in Europe are driven relatively short distances, where fuel economy, if you leave it without doing anything, is the worst.
Right.
And they're trying to do that. And if you look at something in this country, and I don't get me wrong, I like V8s and V6s, but if you look at something that's got a 3-liter V6 in it, you're really not losing that much to go to a 2.5-liter 4-cylinder, but give it some kind of electrical boost. But you can make a significant, like 20% improvement in fuel economy. So
It's true.
yeah, I want to see, like you, I do not think it's wise to be putting all of your eggs into the EV basket, because I don't personally think Americans are ready for it, except maybe as a second or third vehicle.
Mhm.
And it's a lot of money to pay for a second or third vehicle. So I think they've got the brands that are out there looking at internal combustion engines with some kind of electric assist and make it overall a more fuel efficient package. I think they may be the winners, at least for the next 15 years.
No,
Personally.
I absolutely agree. I agree, because I think it's hard for some people's brains to wrap their head around it. But if you made every single full-size SUV like you improve the fuel economy by 5 miles per gallon,
Be huge.
that's huge. It cuts down on emissions. You know, if we're talking about sustainability, which is what the conversation around EVs should always be about, sustainability, then that should also be in the conversation, is how can we make gas engines, because for many places, say you live up where it's very, very cold,
Right.
and
Just had some comments about that. We're not looking at EVs are great until the temperatures don't get above freezing for 2 months. So
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
before we get away from LA, and we've been running a little long, I do want to talk about VinFast. Most say is, who's that? VinFast is a new Vietnamese automaker They have come on the US scene, or are coming on the US scene very aggressively. They use the LA Auto Show as their coming out party for their two SUVs. They have a compact model, the E35, and a mid-size model, the E36. They are going to beat, looks like they're going to be beating a lot of the Chinese wannabes into the US market. They're already signing up dealers. They expect sales to begin next year. None of the vehicles look like they break any new ground, but they are talking about some electrified stuff down the line. Here could be what I think a lot of automakers have been afraid of for a long time, and that is an upstart Asian automaker coming in with a high quality vehicle at a low price and probably a very generous warranty, although they've not really said very much about any of that. I don't know what you guys think about VinFast, but I think they're kind of exciting.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it is a very exciting new automaker.
They look very
Because-
conventional. There's not a lot of, I mean, in fact, if you look at the front ends, they've got that V grill, almost reminds you of a Nissan.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've probably done a lot of studying about what Americans want to buy and what we're interested in. And certainly the low price is a big deal, because I think a lot about Hyundai Kia
Right.
in that same vein of being very intelligent about what they sell here at what price. And who would have thought 20 years ago that some of the product models that Hyundai and Kia have brought to us, and Genesis has evolved from them. So I think this is a very interesting situation for a new automaker to be in. But I'm really interested to see the product in reality, to see how it shapes up.
You know, they've even said that if things go well, they'll start manufacturing vehicles here in 2024.
Wow.
They want to be aggressive. Okay, we did sort of have a little bit of a rant and rave. Did anybody else have anything they want to add to that?
I actually don't really have anything except for holiday season and parking lots. That's definitely one. People
I've already got a ding in my.
I was going to say, people just be nice. Just be nice in the parking lot. We're all trying to do the same thing. We're got to get our gifts early, get everything done. Stop fighting over parking spots. Stop parking too close or driving aggressively in the parking lot because you see a space that's 3 spaces closer to the front door of, your Marshalls or wherever you're parking. It's just this time of year, parking lots just become a fighting pit, and it drives me crazy. So just be nice to each other, please. It's holidays.
And
Also, yeah, go ahead.
look around. Don't just look at the screen on your backup camera.
Yeah,
look around.
Use your head over the shoulder, left, right. We good? Go.
Hey, I thought we didn't know how to turn our heads anymore.
No, my truck's 12 years old at this point. I don't have any of the nice features in my truck, so I got to go over my shoulder everywhere.
Thank you both. Our road test producer, Kyle Scanlon, there giving us his words of good wishes for the holidays. Our digital producer, Jessica Ray. Thank you both for joining me today and joining us all for our MotorWeek podcast number 267. I want to say thanks to our audio engineer back at MPT, Jim Bigwood, our podcast producer, in this case, Jessica, and our podcast creator, Bob Mixter, who came up with this idea years ago and never thought we'd still be doing them, but here we are. And to all of you out there, thank you very much for joining us for our MotorWeek podcast number 267. And if you're new to the MotorWeek family and you'd like to know more about us, just about everything about us is available at our website, motorweek.org, including a station finder so you can watch the show on your local public television station. Just go to the upper corner and pull down the station finder. You can put in your zip code, get time and date. Or you can hop over to our cable partner at MAV TV, and they have us on several times during the week, and mavtv.com for their full listing. You can go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/MotorWeek, and watch just about everything we've done for the past umpteen years, and even stream us for free over at pbs.org/MotorWeek. Basically, if you have a screen, you can watch MotorWeek. Till next time, everyone, I'm John Davis. Thanks for being a part of MotorWeek.
You've been listening to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by Lucas Oil and TireRack.com. For additional information on podcasts, videos, and showtimes, visit our website at motorweek.org. And watch MotorWeek, television's longest-running automotive magazine series each week on your local PBS station.